Spirit on the water, darkness on the face of the deep. I keep thinking about you, baby, and I can't hardly sleep. I'm traveling by land, traveling through the dawn of the day. You're always on my mind. I can't stay away. Welcome to Songs of Experience, a Bob Dylan podcast where we explore the man and the music one song at a time. I'm your host, Henry Bernstein, and I am so happy to have my friend, the co-creator of the Bob Dylan fan club, receiver of a Bob Dylan hug, Willie Nelson braid twin, staple of the first row, Caroline Schwarz, here to talk about the second track of my favorite 21st century album, Modern Times, 2006's Spirit on the Water. Hi, Caroline.
Awesome. Hey, man. Thanks a lot for having me on your show.
Thanks for being here. I'm in such deep gratitude for you to not only complete the set of Bob Dylan fan club hosts for me, but also to finally bring in Modern Times. I don't know about you, but I love Modern Times. It's, like I said, my favorite Jack Frost album. How do you feel about Modern Times?
Is this the first Modern Times song on your show? The t-shirt, too. Right. Did you notice? I'm the first guest to wear a t-shirt of the song.
Yes. The closest I could get was the Thunder on the Mountain t-shirt. Well, it's just a track too early. But yeah, wow, you're just hitting like the trifecta of everything. Wow, amazing. Yeah, I mean, so, like Kate, I admired you from afar on Facebook, some online interactions over the years. I think when the Bob Dylan, I was telling Kate, I was reading the Bob Dylan fan club and picking through Modern Times right when it came out. I lived on those. It was like Expecting Rain, Bob Dylan fan club, Bob's Boots, things like that were all in like my early Bob onboarding. But you and I actually, for the first time we met, I think in maybe Richmond, Kentucky or something.
It was either Kentucky or West Virginia.
I never made it to West Virginia.
Up to us. I thought it maybe was Huntington, West Virginia, but then it must have been in Kentucky the next night because we did that little run, and that's
you did that run. So I think
I
think Richmond. I clocked you. I was pretty close up, not as close as you. I clocked you in the first row, and I was like, "You're real in real life." And I introduced myself. You gave me my beloved Bob Dylan Purple Fan Club button, and then the next night we partied at Evansville. So
was that the night of was that a Bob Point night? Because I remember you came up after that, I think, at that show and talked.
That's right. Richmond was the double Bob Point. So yeah, exactly.
I always love those.
So what is your Bob Dylan origin story? How did you get into him?
I got into him pretty young. I mean, it was mostly just on my own. I have a brother who's little less than 2 years older than me. And so around the time that him and I were young teenagers, we were getting into classic rock and good music. So we kind of both sort of helped each other. We both liked Bob Dylan. And I actually had the wonderful opportunity of seeing him when I was just 15 in Germany. My dad was German. And so we would go over every summer from the States and visit my Oma. And he lived in Mannheim. And so it was in the early 80s. It was 1981. And we were visiting Mannheim and visiting my dad's family. And we were just walking around town, and we saw a wall full of posters that Bob Dylan was playing there in like 3 days. It was obviously way pre-internet or any kind of intel like that. And so my brother Robert and I had just started listening to Bob Dylan. I think maybe we had like The Times They Are A-Changin' on a cassette and a couple other things. And I didn't know hardly anything about him, but I knew I liked him and knew I wanted to see him. And so we got our parents to buy us tickets to that show. And somehow I like knew I needed to be in the front row too, which is really weird because I'd only been to like one other concert before, but my mom and dad dropped us off. It was at a giant like arena. And they dropped us off at, 11 in the morning or noon. And we waited in line all day. And then when the doors open, I remember I was like, we got to go down there. And my brother's he's a little bit more cautious than I am. So he was like, no, we should just get a seat. And I was like, come on, So we ran down and I was like front and center for my very first Bob Dylan show at 15 years old in 1981, knowing hardly anything about him, but I was blown away.
Oh my God, Caroline, there's so much to process right now. First of all, that you saw Bob Dylan for the first time in like the gospel period, right?
Yeah,
1981 in an arena.
It was when he was coming out of playing only those songs.
Right. So he was doing like those amazing Blowing in the Wind and stuff.
Yeah, it was like a 35 song show.
Oh my God.
And it was like stuff from Saved and Slow Train. It was stuff off of Shot of Love, which hadn't even come out yet. And then it was a bunch of old stuff, probably in that 35 song show. I knew 5 to 7 songs. So, but I loved it.
You loved it.
Oh my God. I'm a music person. It didn't really come from like parents had music on, they listened to show tunes and some of the popular stuff of the day, but I don't know, it really came from within.
Oh my God. I mean, that's incredible. It really came from your spirit on the water. Wow. Incredible. Yeah. Wow. Amazing. Yeah.
Well, so I've been a Bob fan since that, since the early 80s. And
then from there, did you just like deep dive, like every time a new album came out, you were in, like, when did you get the sickness?
Yeah, it took, what happened was I really loved that show. I think, like I said, we had a couple of Bob things on cassette. After that show, I think maybe even before we left Germany, a couple days later, we were like walking through town and there was a record store. And I think maybe because Bob had been in town and his most recent live album was at Budokan, that's one of the first albums that I bought. I was like, I just saw Bob Dylan live, so I want to get this live album, thinking it would sort of recreate that experience, which obviously is totally different.
Although closer to anything else, if you were like Budokan to what you saw.
That too. So that was one of my first albums, and I actually like learned or heard a lot of songs of Bob's for the very first time on that record. And then, I just sort of like would spend my allowance every week on like buying another Bob album. I was into other music too. I was really into the Rolling Stones at that time. So I was kind of just buying through the back catalog. Mm-hmm. And so it's funny, like I would listen to a song like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of one that was like, maybe I Want You, which is real slow on Budokan. And then at some point I got Blonde on Blonde, and I was like, wait, that's not like that song. Pretty early on, I was struck by how like weird he is in terms of just changing stuff up, and that really appealed to me. And so I just kind of went back through all the studio albums until I think the first one that I really like anticipated and bought on the day it came out was Infidels. So I was like in mid high school and had been into him for a while, but there's a lot to learn and a lot to study there. So I don't know. He's incredible. Just always done it for me.
I have a similar experience with Budokan. When I was getting into Bob when I was about 19, subscribed to remember the Columbia Warehouse CD thing, the BMG, or whatever it was called. Yeah, BMG. And so I would just get buy one Bob Dylan album and then get the rest of them for like a penny or something.
That's cool.
But I remember that Budokan was like, a double live album, great, I'll learn all the songs, like that's a great for a penny or something. And I didn't know that Don't Think Twice, It's All Right wasn't supposed to be reggae when it was
time. I know. That's funny.
I definitely heard it before I heard Blonde on Blonde. Like that I Want You was very
that's how that song goes, but that's also how that song goes.
It used to go like that, now it goes like this, right? That's amazing. Well, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but at what point do you think he became like an important part of your life as like a did you continue to see him live all those years later, or?
But I was still pretty young, so I lived overseas at the time that I first saw him, so I was living in Europe because of my dad's job for a few years after that. But then we moved back to the US in 84. So for a long time throughout the 80s and 90s, I would just kind of see him when he came to town. And I lived in the greater Detroit area. I grew up my latter high school and all my college in Ann Arbor. And so he would come through pretty much every summer and sometimes play 2 nights at either Pine Knob or Meadowbrook. And I would always go.
All these years later, he's still playing Pine Knob, right?
I know. I went there last summer for the first time in years for the Outlaw Festival. But, I remember, it's funny, I was just talking to someone about this the other day. Like, I was student, either high school or college, so I was pretty poor. So he'd play 2 nights at Meadowbrook, and I would buy like 1 lawn ticket and then just get 1 pavilion as close as I could get or whatnot. But so for a lot of the time, I was just seeing him when he would come close by. Had a couple of stints with Dylan and the Dead in 87. And then in 89, right after I graduated college, my brother and I did like a 4-show tour around the Midwest. So I did a little bit of dabbling into going out on the road and seeing more than just the hometown show. That didn't in earnest start. I kind of lost my mind with Love and Theft. So '01 was when just my life circumstances and that record, which I just thought and continue to think was phenomenal, kind of spurred me to like, wow, I could see more shows than, Michigan, maybe Ohio, and started doing more kind of planning my life around it a little bit.
Awesome. That's awesome. This was comes from the Modern Times album, which was recorded at Clinton Recording in New York City in February of 2006 and released August 29th, 2006. So sort of that quick turnaround we're used to with Bob Dylan albums. He records them, he masters them, he gets them out to us. People on the album, the musicians on the album, are Bob Dylan, vocals, guitar, harmonica, piano, Kenny Freeman on guitar, Tony Garnier on bass, hello upright bass, Donnie Heron on steel guitar, violin, viola, and mandolin, Stu Kimball on guitar, George Rosselli on drums, percussion. So the core
for a long time
at the time was the one. He just brought them, let's go do this. And I recommend to folks out there to read the Wikipedia article. I'm not going to read it all now, but there's a great quote from Denny Freeman about it actually being from a Rolling Stone article, a very difficult process to record it. Bob Dylan said in a Rolling Stone article, "This is the best band I've ever been in. I've ever had, man for man. When you play with guys 100 times a year, you know what you can do and can't do, what they're good at, what you want them there. It takes a long time to find a band of individual players. Most bands are gangs." And he goes on a little bit. It's just,
that's very interesting, because not to interrupt you, but before I forget, so I'm sure we'll get into this, but when Kate and I met him the summer before, and he said something very similar about that band to us. So
okay, put a pin in that. I want to come back to that. You obviously have then a strong affection for this sort of core nucleus band. Why this song, Caroline? Why did you want to come on and talk about Spirit on the Water?
Well, this song, so the album Modern Times came out at like a very intense time in my Bob Dylan touring career, not to make it sound like work. So it had been, so 03 and 04 were my top 2 years of shows of seeing Bob, and 05 was not far behind. And in the summer of 2005 was when Kate and I had the wonderful opportunity to be asked to meet him and talk with him. And that led to the starting of the Bob Dylan fan club. And so the album itself is it's very intense for me. And it's very much an album that reflects a very active Bob Dylan fandom for me. As such, when it came out, we all sort of heard things through our own experience, right? There were a number of things on that record that I felt just really reflected what I had been going through with Bob, and what we had gotten back reflected from him. And Spirit on the Water kind of takes the cake for that. I remember, so my first hearing of Modern Times, we got a leaked copy. I think it was just the day before it was supposed to come out. And it was something, I think a lot of people heard it. Somehow it got out and it was shared on some Bob Dylan site or group. And so I remember it was when the first time I lived out here in California, and Kate was actually living with me at the time, that got, she was like, "We have the album now." It's I don't know. There's a weird thing about me that I want to wait till the release day and make it. And I didn't with Love and Theft, but I remember she came upstairs where I was and she was like, "We have the record." And I was like, so we went down into Kate's bedroom. We lived at a house together just a few miles from where I am now. And we put it on. And the two things that I remember jumped out at me the most were Thunder on the Mountain. Nice t-shirt.
Yep.
With that giant beginning, it's it's one of the best starts to a song ever.
I'd say it's up there with Rolling Stone as a start to a song and start to an album.
Cymbals that changed the world, or the snare drum that changed the world, or whatever they say. It's very similar. And Spirit on the Water, and it just every favorite song I have, there's some quality about it that's just ineffable. Like there's just something that grabs you about your favorite songs that are like, oh my God, like this is going to be a song for me. Like, but to break it down, like one of the things I love most about it is the way that the music just sort of mirrors the narrative in its kind of lilting, musing quality. And to me, like I just from the first time I heard it, I feel like it's just Bob talking. Like I don't feel like he's inhabiting any character. I don't feel like he's telling some, story. There are sort of archetypes in it, I guess, but it just seemed so like both plain spoken Bob, but at the same time have this completely like ethereal, mystical quality to it in both the words that he's saying and the music as it comes through. And I just love that. I love the music. I love the use of the language. And I love what I interpret as the subject matter, which is Bob talking about his favorite fans.
Wow. Okay.
Like I said, we all hear things through our own experience, but I don't know. I feel like there's some giveaways in there that, in a lot of ways, it kind of reminds me of, and the way that I think about From Rough and Rowdy Ways, I've made up my mind to give myself to you.
It's a love letter to all of us.
That he's speaking to us, the people that come back and then he doesn't see them and they make him happier than anything because that's what he has chosen to do. So I don't know. I'll stop there and see if you have questions.
I hadn't. I'm kind of reeling right now. That was a lot to take in because I hadn't thought about it that way. And it does make a lot of sense, especially, I mean, I don't want to jump ahead, but we're just going to jump ahead right now because this is one of those few songs during that period of time when there was clear audience interaction, almost as if when Bob is saying, you think I'm over the hill, you think I'm past my prime, he's asking us to do that response of no, and it's sort of like a it's like a call and response thing, and it's wow.
Start at the beginning. I was trying to listen back to various live versions, and I know that by the time he played this song so many times, like I was kind of blown away. I didn't realize that it was such a mainstay for decade, like a decade from 06 to 2018. He played it like every tour multiple times for a total of, I think it was like 549, or I don't know. You're the stats guy, but I didn't
we'll get into the stats in a little bit.
Yeah, and trying to like listen to a very early one, but I couldn't necessarily. I don't know if I found one and saw that, but I think it probably was pretty immediate that when he says that, people are like, no, you're not.
As early, I saw it in 2007 for the first time, so I didn't see it in 2006. I
didn't either.
When he started the 2006 tour, the Modern Times Essential Tour, he did 2 nights in Chicago. He opened up the Sears Ice Arena. Terrible video. I don't think Spirit on the Water was on the set list yet.
Yeah.
A lot of the songs were, but not that one. And so I didn't hear it till 2007. And definitely by 2007, it was a thing. Everyone was doing it.
Yeah, so really early on. Yeah, I chased it for a little while. I did not see it in 2006. And I saw a lot of shows in 2006. So it was kind of this like white whale for a little bit. Like I would go to a show or go to 3 shows and then he'd play at the next one. And I was like, damn it. But then I first saw it in the summer of 2007 in Sterling Heights, Michigan.
Well, this song borrows from a lot of imagery and a lot of textual things.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, I think, pretty widely understood that Spirit on the Water, is a reference to the second verse of Genesis, Bereshit, where in Hebrew it's Ruach Elohim, Spirit of God. And Ruach in Hebrew, in biblical Hebrew, usually means spirit. And in modern Hebrew, it actually means wind. They took the word for spirit as wind. So I think it's clear to me that is what that's a reference to. But what do you make of this first?
Well, I'm not like a huge biblical person, but I do know that now. It wasn't necessarily the first thing that came to my mind. And there's also the mention of the surface of the deep, right? So it's clearly, Bob's a Bible guy, so he clearly got that. Funny, like, to me, like the things that it made me think about before I learned of the biblical reference was Henry David Thoreau,
Say
who was
more.
sort of my Bible in college. I took a deep dive semester long class into his writing where I actually lived by Walden Pond and did all these literary studies of him. And he's just my Bible in a lot of ways. And he actually has a poem called Mist. And then in Walden, he talks a lot about the Walden Pond in the morning and the mist rising off the pond being like, I don't think he calls them spirits, he calls it ghosts. And to him, it's very reflective of sort of the creation of a new day. And the sort of receding of nighttime and kind of enlightening of things. So there's a cool connection there. I mean, I can read you quickly because I printed out the quote exactly.
Perfect. Yeah, let's hear it.
If I can find it. Oh yeah, here it is. So see, he says, as the sun arose, I saw it throwing off its nightly clothing of mist, and here and there by degrees its soft ripples or its smooth reflecting surface was revealed, while the mists, like ghosts or spirits, were stealthily withdrawing in every direction into the woods, as at the breaking up of some nocturnal convecticle. I don't really know what convecticle is, but maybe it means like a party.
I don't either.
So anyway, that to me, like, because we all hear things through our experience, right? And that's the image I get. And I love that it's both and that it's all just kind of this mystical thing. And then at the very next couple lines and further into the song, it just becomes very, much more grounded in the mundane or the earthly. Like, I'm traveling by land, I'm traveling through the dawn of the day, and I just picture Bob sitting on his tour bus looking out the window as the sun comes up, maybe seeing some lakes with mist coming off them, So that's one thing I really love about the song is just the juxtaposition of these like mysterious sort of ethereal images, that go all the way back, like you're saying, to Genesis and are these like kind of almighty things, and then just he's yearning after this woman who kind of fades and appears in his life and causes him both pleasure and pain.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting now looking at these opening lyrics, and I can't not see it in the lens that you presented it in. I mean, that's sort of, he's actually kind of being literal about what his experience is on the road if you're going to look at it with that lens. I mean,
but he
literally
was also
I can't stay away. Like I can't, we know that, Bob. We know you can't. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's his muse or his, whoever. So, but he obviously is very clearly putting that Genesis element and that creation story and the, something coming out of the chaos of nothing on the surface of the deep. So that's cool. I don't, it's open to interpretation how that all fits together, but like
something about his experience of playing music and playing music for people is like it's creation. It's like the Big Bang. There was darkness and then there was light.
And then there's other things in it that I feel like, I don't know, kind of speak to the duality of him sort of before that time and after that time, and how he maybe just wants to be a normal guy but he can't, and so this is what he has this sort of mythological existence that is both carnal and supernatural.
Yes. Yeah, he continues, I'd forgotten about you, then you turned up again. I always knew that we were meant to be more than friends. When you are near, it's just as plain as it can be. I'm wild about you, gal. You ought to be a fool about me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so romantic. And, he's like, it's sort of like you're swooning over that. Like, it's not swagger. It's like a charming. He's charming her. He's very, very like it's almost like a very Frank Sinatra-esque, American songbook sort of thing. Like when you're near, it's just as plain as it can be. Do you find that whole piece kind of romantic?
I do. And that's one thing I really love about the whole song and just the choices that he makes is that when you go through it lyric by lyric, a lot of it's very normal language, he's not saying some like highfalutin thing. He's saying, like you're just saying, when you're, and there's a couple other like, it's almost like at points it's almost like cliche, it could be some of the things that he said, we were meant to be more than friends. You say that in like junior high school, like, will you be more than friends with me? It's just this very basic, I don't know how else to say it except almost cliche, but it's 100% not that, the way his delivery is. The way he fits it together. Yeah. It's very charming.
Yeah. It could be cheesy, but it's not.
Yeah, but it's not. And that's one reason why I love it so much, because to just go back to the point of, songs that you feel are just Bob speaking more from like his own self. And I don't know if you've thought about that a lot, or if that makes sense
every
to you.
Waking of my life.
Yeah, right. Because some songs are obviously more like stories, like Hurricane is telling like a historical thing, but other songs are like, he's inhabiting more of a character or a persona or a mythic, sort of telling something. But there are certain Bob Dylan songs that, and I'm sure they're probably different to some degree for everyone, but where you just feel they hit you like, wow, that's really like, that's Bob. Like, there's no filter. Like, he's just saying it as Bob. And I have a number of those, but this is like the nicest. Like, a lot of ones that I think of like that tend to be a lot more verging almost on the bitter. Like, I've always felt that way about Seeing the Real You at Last. And I feel that way about Honest with Me, even though it's got a lot of these kind of crazy images and is sort of like archetypes and mythological or whatever. I do feel like part of the reason he played that so much was it was like a message from him to his audience, But this song, it's just sweet and it's charming and it's longing and it's sad and it's funny, but I think it's just Bob. And that's one of the big reasons why I just love it. I put that song on and I feel like Bob's just like right there in my ear, like talking to me as him.
You can't explain the sources of this hidden pain. You burned your way into my heart. You got the key to my brain. I've been trampling through mud, praying to the powers above. I'm sweating blood. You got a face that begs for love. So he's doing like at the end there, the like Bob Dylan rhyming thing, above, blood, love, which again is a different version of sort of almost cliche, almost cheesy, but it's Bob Dylan who's doing it, and he invented that. It's so sincere. And even I love what you said about it. This is a song where it sounds like he's just talking to us, and I've often felt that he does a lot of that in his live performance with other songs, including this, where he does that sort of having a conversation with himself. Like, it's almost as if he's thinking out loud. Like, like, I can't explain. Like who says that in a song? But
yeah, right.
Yeah, what sticks out to you in this verse here, the can't explain verse?
I mean, I can't explain sources of this hidden pain. Well, what sticks out to me about that is that the things that he is saying to whomever he's saying it to are the same things that like or any other like avid Bob fan who have listened to him and taken all his stuff in would say about him. Like, there's no other artist that I would say to the extent like, you've burned your way into my brain as Bob Dylan, and yet here he is reflecting that back. So I think that's really cool. And there's another part, I'm trying to think of what it is. I have the lyrics printed out, but it's like
in this verse?
No, just in the song in general, but maybe it's you can carry all my thoughts with you. Well, that is like, that to me is like, that's what we do, we carry all his thoughts with us in his lyrics and in his music. And so he's kind of like acknowledging that.
He's also doing that thing where he is either being romantic about or side by side with violence, the sort of like there's like this can't explain the source of my hidden pain, you burned your way into my heart, key to my brain, and then he's trampling through mud, praying to God, right, and sweating blood, like that's but then comes back to this very sweet, you've got a face that begs for love. Never heard that phrase before. Did he just invent that? I think so.
I was thinking about that one today, actually, and I don't know. That almost sounds like it could be another one of these like sort of cliche, but I don't, that's the beauty of it. He's just so seamless.
I
Like,
mean,
is it
slap that on
something
a
that Bob
t-shirt
just,
right there. You've got
yeah,
a face that begs for love. That's a
yeah.
classic Bob Dylan line that he just kind of snuck in there.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's pleasure and pain all the way, man. And that's, sort of the heightening of that, or whatever you want to call it, is the whole like, I want to be with you in paradise, but I can't. It
Yeah,
seems so unfair. I can't go to paradise no more. I killed a man back there.
yeah. Again,
Who is
his
that? Did he really kill someone?
or killed a part of himself or something.
That's what
Yeah.
I think.
Really, Caroline, we're really vibing right now.
I do. I mean, because I've thought about that a lot because it's kind of just out of the blue, right? You're
Hmm.
like, I killed a man. And especially if you're thinking of it as like, this is Bob talking, you're like,
Hmm.
I don't think he's killed anyone. Necessarily know for sure. But yeah, I do think of that reference as well as the ghost reference,
Hmm.
I'm as pale as a ghost, are like about the sort of, the duality or the different ways that you could go and to be who he's become. He's had to kill, yeah, he's had to
Hmm.
kill a part of himself, like what the part that could have just had a normal life and potentially like been with this person, or you know what I mean? Like I think it's
Killed multiple versions of himself.
yeah,
He
he
kills
killed a
himself
man
every
back
time.
there. And
Yeah.
what is remaining is the great version of himself in his life that I'm sure he is very proud of, but it does sort of like prevent him from maybe coming down off the stage and getting with this person who
Hmm.
seems so, appealing to him and
Right.
is blinding him by the colors he sees in her. And
It's
I think it's the
wild.
same. The ghost version, I was thinking about this today when I went on a walk after work, like how that was sort of the most puzzling verse to me. So I'm as pale as a ghost holding a blossom on a stem. You've never seen a ghost? And this is also people go, no,
Well, I
but
love
you've
that. That's
heard of
that thing again
them.
where he's talking to himself. I love that.
Yeah.
That's you ever seen a ghost? No. He's just like
Yeah.
he's responding to his own question. I love that.
Yeah. Especially in some of those years where it was all like gruff.
Right. He'd sort of growl.
I
Nope.
love it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then, like, so what is a ghost? Okay, a ghost is like something that sort of like that you can see but not touch, and that it's like there but it's not there. So that also kind of mimics the relationship if we are thinking that it's with, his muse or his audience or people that you
Mhm.
went away, then you came, or I forgot about you, then you came back again. He's the ghost, because he's
Yeah.
not really like tangible, but he comes and goes, and he's in this other world from this object that he is speaking to, or not object, but person.
I mean, it's sort of like the ghost, the way that he asks the question, you ever seen a ghost? No, but you've heard of
Yeah,
them. It's it's almost referring back to that person he killed himself, that
right.
version of himself that like, do you know about Bob Dylan? Oh, you've heard of
Yeah,
him. You've heard of
right.
Bob Dylan, right? I have that conversation all the time. Like, who's your favorite?
Right.
Henry, who's your favorite? Who's your favorite artist? Bob Dylan. Oh, I don't really know him, but you've heard of him, right? So I think Bob is sort of being in that funny way, kind of
Like a little
self-referential.
self-deprecating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
self-deprecating, self-referential. I mean, you mentioned the way he would during those kind of rough years of the growling and stuff like that. So according to Bob Serve, this song has been performed 572 times. There
Oh
seems to
wow.
be a
Okay.
discrepancy between
Even a little more than
yeah,
BobDylan.com
yeah,
says.
and I haven't checked this on every song, but on most of them where there's a discrepancy, BobDylan.com is in the wrong. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah, I
trust
believe
Bob
it.
Serve on this one, but it was
Fuck
first.
those official websites.
I know, we just need the fan websites. It was first played in October 22nd, 2006 in San Diego.
I
Most
remember
recently.
because I was at the show before and the show after, and I
Oh,
missed it.
of course you
This
were.
was like my tale for a few months until
Oh,
I saw it.
that's amazing. Most recently played August 9th, 2024 in Spokane, Washington. So it even
Yeah,
made
the
it
day
onto
after I saw
Outlaw.
him
Oh, he only
in
played it twice.
Wheatland. I know. And I feel like, okay, so here's where I just go and say it like I think it. Pete and I were at that show. We were in the first couple of rows. We stood up the whole time. Bob was totally like looking at us and interacting with us. And then the next night he plays Spirit on the Water. I'd forgotten about you. Then you showed up again. He thought we were going to be there, damn it.
You let him down, Caroline.
It's only about 13 hours away from me, too. I could have driven up there.
Only 13 hours. Well, you have seen it. how many times
Oh, yeah.
have you
I
seen
don't
Spring
know.
Love?
I actually meant to look at Bob Serve and see, but I mean a lot because my peak years where I saw like the most shows were like '03, '04, '05, on in '06 and '07. But then, he played it all through like
Oh
the
yeah, I saw it the
teens.
most in 2014, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think I pretty much saw it every show I went to in 2014 probably, but I don't know, but I've seen it a lot. I mean, what do we want to say? Like 30 times,
Hmm.
40 times, a lot of times.
Well, that, this puts at 572 times, this puts it 32 on the overall list for Bob Dylan.
Okay,
Now
thank you.
let me tell you where that's sandwiched between, because this is pretty incredible. It
Okay.
is fewer than Silvio and more than Leopard Skin Pillbox Hat. Right in between
Wow.
Silverhead and like Leopard
Interesting.
Skin Pillbox Hat opened up the show for
Yeah.
oh, it's felt like a decade.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, 32 times is a lot.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
or not, number 30, no, sorry, 572
Right.
times is a lot. Number 32
Yeah,
overall
I'm
in the top
shocked. I
50.
was really
Like,
shocked.
so pretty impressive play number. I mean, I've seen Bob Dylan now 48 times and I've seen it 7 times. Like
Hmm.
it was a go-to during, and that was also my
Yeah.
probably I had sort of two peaks of seeing shows was probably that period of time that like right after that period of time you mentioned like
Yeah.
7 to like 2010 or 11 or 12
Yeah.
and now 3
Yeah.
years since Rough and
Yeah.
Rowdy Ways started.
Yeah.
But
I
I
should
mean,
have checked my stats. I didn't get to. Sorry.
that's okay. I'm I'm surprised having seen him so many times you actually have the stats.
Well, I put all my stuff in Bob Serve like pretty recently,
Good job, Caroline.
but I'm not sure I got everything. It's hard
That's what
when
Kate
it's
said.
been, 40 years or well, not quite that long, but
Do you
a long.
have
Well, yeah, it has been
individual
30
ticket
years.
stubs from, going back?
Yeah, I got my I have I have my ticket stub from my very first show in Germany. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I have some of the early 80s ones, but then I do have like my Dylan and the Dead ones because those I got through like the Grateful Dead ticket
Yes.
office and they
Oh,
were
wow.
like all sparkly and cool, so I have those saved.
A lottery, the old Grateful Dead
So
lottery. Wow.
yeah, so no, I have a couple shoe boxes full of ticket stubs. I'm a freaking pack rat. I don't get rid of anything. So
Would you ever frame them or anything like that? Or you like them in the
I have
pattern
done a
log?
few like things with like photos and ticket stubs from like a specific run or
Yes.
whatever. But I don't know. I kind of just like having them in a shoebox, flip through them once or twice a year. But yeah, speaking of the live stuff with that, I mean, I loved being able to hear that song live, and it obviously was a important song to Bob that he played it so much for so long. But I have to say, and I hope if Bob sees this, he doesn't get like angry at me and never plays it at a show that I'm at again. But to me, like none of the live versions just ever quite made it to that studio recorded
I agree.
version
I actually
of
agree. I
Modern
mean,
Times. It's one of
yeah.
those songs, and I don't feel that way about that many Bob Dylan songs, but for me, maybe it's just because it hit me in such a special way initially. And I just love his singing on it. I just think is so amazing. The other line I really love that I just have to mention before we're done is, and it kind of goes into the same category like we were saying of almost like cliches or something that like Frank Sinatra would have said. But I love the line, when I'm with you, I'm 1,000 times happier than I would ever say. And how he just squeezes all those words into that one
Yes.
line, like it's the happiness all squeezed into that line, like
That
that
does
Modern
lend.
Times
Yeah.
version is it's just so perfect to me that nothing ever topped that in terms of the sort of like the ultimate version of that song. I'll
Yeah.
put it on the stereo.
And one of the amazing things about Modern Times is I remember at the time thinking, "Oh wow, his voice is incredible." And this is
Yeah,
like a real highlight of that. And I think
yeah.
because remember, Love and Theft, his voice is a little rough on Love and Theft. I mean, it works and it's
He's a
amazing
little more gargly. Yeah,
because he
yeah,
recorded after a tour. Here,
yeah,
there was a 5-year gap between
yeah,
of albums, right? He's
yeah,
touring, and so his voice is. I remember like that. Even that line, I'm 1,000 miles happier than I could ever say." The way he sings that in such like a
yeah,
high, breathy way. It's like we
Yeah.
hadn't heard that voice in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
great.
and I think that like the live versions don't also during that period of time don't live he wasn't at his best vocally the way he is
Yeah.
now and the way
Yeah,
he
he was a
was.
little gruffer. Yeah. I was just gonna say the ending, and there were some great harmonica solos live too, but the outro with that just amazing, like, I don't know, to me it's such like, again, I go back to the word charming. It's such a charming harmonica solo with the guitar alongside. Like, who would that be? It would be like Denny,
Yeah.
like the, little like runs that just complement the harmonica riffs. It's just perfect. Like, it's just perfection.
It's total perfection. Love. It's crazy that it's the only song on the album with harmonica.
That's right.
Like
That's
all the
right. I
blues,
forgot
great.
that.
There's Someday
Yeah.
Baby, Thunder on the Mountain.
Yeah.
There's all these great Rollin' and Tumblin'.
Yeah.
There's all these great blues numbers, no
Yeah.
harmonica.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, and his harmonica was pretty sparse live, I think, at
Yes.
that time too, but he would play it. In fact, some of the live versions I was kind of listening to, I listened to maybe 3 or 4 today from over the years, had harmonica intros too, and
Yes, I
not just
remember
the
that.
outro. Yeah. So,
I remember
yeah,
that.
that is weird. I forgot that. I did know that, but then I forgot that that's the only harmonica bit on that whole record.
It's also so perfectly placed on the album because as previously discussed, Thunder on the Mountain, it starts with a bang. And
Yeah.
then it's almost like a great set list. Like he kind of
Yeah.
takes you down.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
surprising because usually in an album, if you start with a banger, it goes for another couple. It's like
Yeah.
banger after banger,
Yeah.
then it brings you down.
Yeah.
But he brings you down right away and sort of lulls you into this stupor and this sort of
Yeah.
romantic, dreamy
Yeah.
world he's
Yeah.
in. And
Yep.
then all of a sudden it's over, and then we're on a Muddy Waters song all of a sudden, and
Right.
it's
Right.
and he's just scorching it.
Yeah.
I think like that sandwich of the Thunder on the Mountain and Rollin' and Tumblin' with Spirit on the Water is so perfect. That's what makes this album so special, and one of the
Yeah.
things and why it's such a good multiple listen album. Like you could start
Yeah.
it all over once it ends.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
Like,
think he didn't want that song to get lost, so he put
yeah.
it in that
Oh, you're
spot.
right.
But yeah.
Uh,
Modern Times is like one of my favorite driving albums, actually. Like, if I'm
yes.
on a road trip, just to put that in and crank it up.
It's definitely a driving album. On a couple of the road trips Michael Glover Smith and I have done, we've
Yeah.
gone through Love and Theft and Modern Times, then like back
Yeah.
around again
Yeah. Yeah.
because
They're
those are
both
such
really good.
good
Yeah.
driving. And I remember in those days, for early for me, not early for you, but listening
Hey,
to
what are you saying?
well, listening to Modern Times on the way to shows all the time. It was like I had one CD slot in my CD player. It didn't have
Yeah.
a phone yet.
Yeah.
And so we just listened to Modern Times over and over again. Drive
Yeah, no,
notes.
me and Kate did that the fall that it came out, because we did a whole run of shows down, I think from like Oregon down the coast. Saw a couple of debuts from that, but like I said, kept missing Spirit on the
Mhm.
Water. But we saw the debut of Rollin' and Tumblin', I think, in Portland.
Oh,
And
so
yeah, we
good.
would just put that album on repeat and sort of try to listen to all the references for our lives. Like I said,
Wow.
it was just like such a, we were just out there so much that time, and we had just met Bob. And so, you just kind of hear these little things that you're like, going to sleep over there. That's where the music's coming from. And those were the days when we would just drive to the venue, roll out our sleeping
Yep.
bags, wake up there the next day,
Hmm.
So there's all these things that are just like, to me, references to what was going on in my life then. But that's what makes music so great.
Well, let's talk about we touched on a little bit at the beginning. Let's talk about you think I'm over the hill, you think I'm past my primes. Thinking about that 2006, 19 years ago, thinking about him then as over the hill, knowing what we know
Yeah.
now, that like Rough and
Yeah.
Rowdy Ways came out and we're still seeing him on the road.
Right.
But back
Yeah.
then he was saying that line. And do you think so? That line, let me just explain for the folks that might not know. This is one of those moments of interaction with Bob Dylan at a concert, a rare, hello St. Louis kind of thing, or like, the winds in Chicago have torn me to shreds. Like, this was for everyone. He would say, "You think I'm over the hill?" And everyone in the crowd would
Yeah.
go, "Oh," exactly. And then, "You think I'm past my prime?" Oh. And it
Yeah.
was so fun. And then he kind of chuckles, "Let me see what you
Yeah.
got. We can have a whopping good
Yeah.
time."
Yeah. It's hard to say. Like, I tend to, I mean, it's hard to imagine that he put those lines in there, like, because he thought he would get, like, if I do this live, people will say
Oh,
no,
well, that was my question. Do you think that that part of him,
I
it
don't
was
think
intentional?
so. I
No.
mean, but I don't claim to, I only claim to know what I think,
Right.
about songs. I don't claim to, obviously, nobody does know what
This is
Bob's
pure.
intentions were, but to
Right.
me, it just seemed like I don't know, kind of like it's just sort of like a dig, maybe at people that don't really know how good
Oh
he
yeah.
was still then. And then, of course, he get like a number one he got a number one record, like on some chart with
It wa-
Modern Time.
did it win a Grammy? No, Love
I
and
don't
Theft
think
won a
it won a
Grammy.
Grammy, but it
Oh,
went to
yeah.
number one, like in its first like
Right.
weeks on something. I don't know if it was
And
Billboard or.
there's another huge important thing we have to talk about this album. This was Bob Dylan coming to iTunes. Do you remember how huge that was?
Hey, yeah, I
The
forgot
Someday
about that.
Baby commercial,
Yeah,
which
yeah, I
still
forgot
hasn't
about
played it
that.
yet.
Yeah, yeah,
But I'm holding out
right.
hope. But
Yeah,
that spinning Bob in the chair just lives rent
yeah,
free on my mind. I put it on some merch if anyone wants to check
right.
that out.
Yeah,
But
nice.
but like that the Bob coming to iTunes, that was so huge, and it was before the Beatles came, I
Yeah,
believe, which was enormous. And
cool.
in the Walter Isaacson
Yeah,
book about Steve
yeah,
Jobs, Steve was obsessed with Bob Dylan, so much so
yeah.
that he dated Joan Baez. Like, he
Oh,
wanted to be. And so when they finally got, that was huge for him, meeting Bob
yeah,
Dylan, doing the commercial, getting him onto iTunes. And I think that really was what launched
yeah.
iTunes for of like buying music for a certain
That's cool.
generation
Yeah, I
too.
hadn't
So
remembered about that.
it
Yeah, I
was
don't know. I don't know about the think I'm over the hill. It's his
okay.
little dig or like, and then he's like, well, let me see what you got. Like he's challenging,
Totally.
like he always does. Like,
Yeah.
it reminds me a little bit about how, like, I remember reading an interview after Time Out of Mind, because he made that record. And there's a lot of songs on there that are about like mortality and not
Yes.
dark yet and trying to get to heaven. And then, of course, Bob had the
The heart thing. Yeah.
histoplasmosis thing where he was hospitalized. And I remember reading an interview and maybe it was even in Rolling Stone. It was some big publication, and they were like, "Well, this is clearly a record about your mortality." And Bob's response was, "Well, why is it about my mortality? Why isn't it about your mortality?" So it kind of makes me
Exactly.
think of that. Like, let me see what you got.
Yeah, totally. Well, he's definitely like poking at the critics or the people
Yeah,
who come to his
yeah,
show and are like, play the
yeah.
hits. Yeah. That's amazing. So Caroline, when Kate was here, she obviously told the story, and you can go to the Bob Dylan Fan Club website and go click on Origin Story, and you can read all about when Caroline
Yep,
met
yep.
Bob Dylan beautifully, by the way. I've read it like
Thank
five
you.
times, and
I've
I
read it
still
like
can't.
100 just to like remind myself.
Is there anything from that story that Kate didn't touch on, or that maybe you wanted to express from your perspective what that was like? And you're very
Well,
descriptive about the hug and where his hands were and everything. I love that part.
it was like a little noodling around the waist.
You're not
I
mad
mean,
about
it's
it.
pretty much like everything that I remember is in that story because I sat down and I just wrote out every little detail that I could remember. So I'm sure there's something I forgot, but it was sort of like little clips from a movie and I wanted to like not lose any of it. So I pretty much put it all down there. I mean, maybe in line with just talking about this song, I'll say one thing
Hmm.
that just was one of these things that when Spirit on the Water came out, it made me feel like Bob was talking to me
Hmm.
because in that day we used to wear like tons and tons of glitter.
Your glitter era.
We were known as the Glitter Girls by all of Bob's crew. And so I definitely had the feeling when I first heard the line, I see you there, I'm blinded by the colors. I always think of that. And when we met Bob, we both sort of were like, when we left, we were like, he was really like we were like, was that just like the Bob squint, or were we like really like blind? Because we met him like on a very sunny day in Minnesota, full of glitter. So I don't know. That's just a little thing that makes me chuckle, that
That's
I'm
amazing.
like,
You're like,
could
that's
be
about
taken
me.
in many different ways, but I like to think about it as like I'm blinded by the glitter girl. Yeah.
That's
But
great.
no, I mean, that was, it was a great day, obviously. And I feel just really lucky to have had that happen. And, not only did we get to meet him, but he sort of gave us the directive to start a fan club, the type of which I guess he felt like he hadn't had before.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe he just wanted something to talk about and that's what came out. But whatever. Now we have this fan club that's got about 100,000 members and has the Facebook group and our own newly revamped website. And it's a labor of love. And I wouldn't want to do it for anybody but him.
It's really a remarkable community of people, and so many people that I've talked to for years and years on there. Now I know in person, like yourself, and
Yeah.
see at concerts and it really created something that is special to everyone has their fan community, but like for whatever reason, Bob Dylan, it was never felt organized, but you and
Yeah.
Kate really have collected all of us. So I just
I mean,
really
it was
appreciated you.
daunting, like to be asked to do this in 2005, because you're just like, well, what does he mean? Like obviously Bob Dylan's not stupid. Like he knows there's many, many forums out there that
Mm-hmm.
discuss him, and this magazine in
Right.
England that's a revered thing that his organization has given tickets to for years, which I gotta say they never did to us. So they can still do that if you're listening. So there were all these things that were very well established. And then here he is saying, I've never had a fan club. Would you like to start one? Which, like, verbatim is what he said.
Wow.
And we were just like, I don't know. I do feel like from the feedback that we get from people and from the fact that we have such a big membership, that it did. And it took us, a lot of talking to people that we knew, at the time, that, we didn't know you at the time, but Matt and Jennifer Steichen and,
Right.
Other fans, to get their input on like what's missing from the
Right.
Bob Dylan fan, or not even what could we add in this new platform. And I feel like, that we did something right, because it does have a vast membership and we get a lot of really great feedback from people. And we've gotten, feedback here and there over the years from Bob's people, just kind of asking us a couple of questions and being like, okay, and you guys are doing a good job. So I feel like it's,
Oh, wow.
it
Have
did,
they ever
it,
asked you to not do something or take something down?
but they asked us at the very, very beginning. We wrote a letter to Jeff Rosen because we were like, can we call this the official Bob Dylan fan club? Because he asked us to start it, and there
Right.
is no official Bob Dylan fan club.
Right.
So we wrote a letter, somehow got the address to write to him from somebody, and we wrote like a typed up letter saying, here's what happened. We met Bob, and he asked us to start a fan club. And can we call it the official Bob Dylan fan club? And then, like, no, like 8 months later or something, we got an email from Jeff Rosen saying, we never, nor do we wish to have an official Bob Dylan fan club, but do your thing and keep up the good
God
kind of
bless.
thing. And then we do
Wow.
have, I mean, if you look at the fan club page, we have a little disclaimer at the bottom saying that this page is owned by the Bob Dylan Music Organization, because anything that has Bob Dylan's name on it is actually a copyrighted thing.
Mm.
And so has to be like, if you're going to use his name in anything, then you have to be like okayed. So we're okayed, but they basically leave us alone, and we try to stay within the parameters of what we think Bob would like and are prepared to hear to do or not do something. But mostly it's just kind of been a free reign kind of thing, and it seems like it's been pretty good.
It's been great. Is there anything else you want to say about Spirit on the Water or
Oh
Bob Dylan
man.
in general?
Gosh, I mean, that's always a hard question. I don't think so. I feel like we've covered a lot of. Let me take a brief look over my notes. I mean, I feel like definitely we had a great conversation about the song, and
I
it's cool that
agree.
we sort of had the same we're on the same page about some things. And any Dylan song is, what it means to you is what makes it so great.
Right.
And so this one happened to come along at a time in my life when I was pretty like deeply entrenched in like the touring and had just met him. And so I read a lot of, the context of that into this song, but for somebody else, it might mean something completely different. And I'm not saying that I'm right and they're wrong.
Wow. If you could hear one song one more time live, is that Spirit on the Water, or is like Spirit on the Water in the
You mean
mix
like
for
of
you?
any song
Of
that I
any
have?
song that
Or
you've
can it be,
heard
oh, that I
more,
have heard?
let's say any song, not like a one-off, like any song that you've heard that was like on the standard set list, but he's
Yeah.
not playing now. If you could hear it one more time.
Oh, can I sit here and think for like
Oh,
10 minutes?
10 minutes?
I mean, Spirit in the Water would be a good one. I'm sure I'm like missing something though. I mean, it would be easier if you were like, was there one song that you haven't heard? I mean, I guess
Well,
maybe I would
sure. I'm
say,
curious about that too, Caroline. What's the one song you
yeah,
haven't heard that you would love to hear live?
I'd love to hear Something There Is About You from
Mm.
Planet Waves.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
deep cut. It was one of my favorite ones. It's got an amazing harmonica solo.
It's got
And
that
it's kind
great
of another
Minnesota
of those,
reference.
yeah, it's another of those ones that I just feel is kind of like Bob talking to like
Mm-hmm.
somebody in
Mm-hmm.
his past or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So I just love that song. It's very sort of rustic. It's not all that like deep or whatever, but that would be, if you broke that out at a show that I was at, that would be
Did he do
incredible.
it other than in 74 tour? Like,
I
did
don't
he?
think so.
Yeah, I don't
I
think.
don't think so.
Yeah.
But probably of like, more of the songs that I've heard but haven't heard in a long time that's very meaningful to me that I would love to see like a great new version of, or, old new version of, would probably be Visions of Johanna.
Hmm.
Because it's been a little while for that, right? Like that, has that popped up at any Outlaws? I'm a little
No,
bit more out of touch than I used to be in terms of the set lists and stuff,
even though you guys post it.
even though I post them, but I'm not always
From
like
Bob
paying
Links. Yeah.
attention. But that's
No, we
been a
haven't
little
seen
while,
Visions
right?
in a long time.
Yeah. So that would probably be the one. That was another song. That was probably the song that I chased. And in fact, my book in progress, that's been in progress for
Mm.
10 plus years, it's all my road tales
Oh,
that I'll be
wow.
happy if I never publish, just because I'll be reading it if I live long enough when I'm like 80 and remembering all these things. But then people are like, you got to publish it. So I would like to do that too. So if any publishers are watching this, but the working title of that is actually Chasing Visions, because I saw Bob Dylan for many, many years before I saw Visions of Johanna. And it's not like he wasn't playing it. It was another one
Right.
of those songs that throughout the early 2000s, I would go to 3 shows and then he'd play it the next one.
I was
So,
chasing it for a long time too. I saw it
yeah,
twice. That's it.
yeah. I've seen more than that, but not a giant amount of times. I'll have to check BobServe to let you
Mhm.
know how many. But that would probably be the one more kind of normal song that if I could be at a show and that got brought back when I was there, that would be cool.
Awesome. Well, where can folks find you? Just the Bob Dylan Fan Club. Google that.
Oh yeah, yep. We just revamped our website and it's really cool. There's a couple of more interactive features that people can input their own personal experiences, either from live shows or from just their, what made them a Bob Dylan fan, and places to read other people's answers and contribute your own for posterity, because we all know that social media is fleeting, and websites, even though people don't go to them as much, are there forever or until
Yep.
the internet collapses, whichever comes first. But
Right.
anyway, so that's just the bobdylanfanclub.com. Don't forget the. And then our only real social media that's active is Facebook, and
Yeah.
you can just find that by going to the Bob Dylan Fan Club and requesting to join.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Caroline.
Hey, this was really fun. Yeah, thanks
Absolutely.
for having me, and I'm glad I finally overcame my fears of song analysis to talk to you, because it really wasn't that analytical. It was more just fun and feeling.
It's all about the vibes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, you'll have to think of your next song.
Yeah. Kate and I were saying that we should try to do one together.
100%. You have an
Which would
open
be really
invitation.
fun. So we have a couple songs that I can think of that were very formative in our touring together years that I don't know if anybody has done before. But yeah, we should talk about that, because it would be
Perfect.
fun to do like a joint one.
That would be amazing. That would be my dream.
Well,
Thanks.
I'll let you be in my dream if I can be in yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Look for the next episode on the 15th day of the month in all of your podcast feeds. If you're subscribing to Apple Podcasts, please take a moment and give us a rating or review. It's the best way to spread the word about the show. For a video version of the podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at Songs of Bob Dylan. You can, of course, email us at songsofbobdylan@gmail.com. Thank you to my friend and mentor, Rob Kelly, for designing our fabulous logo, and to my mandolin teacher, Mark Mitchell, from the Old Town School of Folk Music in Chicago, for teaching me how to play the intro and the outro. If you'd like to help support the cost of hosting my podcasts, go to patreon.com/gonzo3249. For $5, I'll show my gratitude by giving you a shout out. So thank you to Rob Kelly, Joachim Meckel, Roberta Rakov, Matt Simonson, Christopher Vani. For $10, I'll send you a surprise piece of vintage Bob Dylan merch. So thank you to the girl from the North Country, Katie Sorovic. Speaking of merch, I have a store. Lots of fun stickers, shirts, hats, and other goodies for you. So check it out at etsy.com/Henry Podcast Store. Thank you to my Substack subscribers, Mark Godfrey, Linda Maltzby, George Pasella, Bonnie Ramba, Nancy Cobb, and Peter White. You can check that out at henrybernstein.substack.com. Truly, I love you all. Thank you again, and see you next time.